Hey guys, so really enjoyed this interview with James Robertson. I've known him for a few years, and he has helped me get perspective in life in certain difficult areas where I was maybe identifying too much with my intellect. I think he can help a lot of you who maybe have left old ways of thinking or searching for authenticity in your own life. um, yeah, I think the interview went really well. Hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for coming to my channel. This is Sharp and Active, part of MythVision Radio Group, where the stars align and everything comes together in terms of the Bible, truth, imagination, and symbolism. First of all, welcome to my channel, because this is going to be on probably my YouTube channel.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and yeah, so you're James Robertson, you're a life coach, you had this spiritual journey. I'll just read this and then I'll get into some questions maybe. Um,
That's good.
so I had this syncretistic thought. So it says, one of the reasons I am so misunderstood, I study things so I can help people live in the now authentically with clarity and freedom. But people just assume I study things because they think I'm religious about it or trying to find clarity. No, that was before, when I had frightening beliefs. And this is also why mind control is a worse problem than most people imagine. It might look like I wander from one paradigm to the next, but there is truly a method to the madness. It takes a sort of faith to grow. Growth and change looks like chaos, and most won't even begin the journey. When they have, they hold on to the next best thing instead of continuing to grow. That is why we must stop identifying with our thoughts so much in the West. Some already have this peace, but a part of them holds on to some form of imaginary history that contradicts their peace. The subconscious war with the self, if they even go to war. The only true religion is one that supports the authentic journey of the sincere self, which is the divine consciousness. All else is just a process of falling off, a sort of kingdom which is divided against itself and cannot stand on its own. Can you stand on your own? so so I wrote this last night. I was just kind of brainstorming. I wasn't really thinking about this meeting. I was just kind of thinking about, okay, what do I
Yeah.
actually stand for now? Because yeah, with my spiritual journey, I've kind of gone through some of these different religions and cults, and a lot of it had to do with the Bible, and now I'm in a place where I'm like looking at things totally differently. Um, but what has that journey been like for you? And because you said that you found uh, everything that you know by looking within yourself, and I've found that more to be true. And is a universal truth is it has to be inside of us. It has to do with who we are and interpreting things through our own experience and our own journey and whatever's inside of us. So yeah,
Um, First off, I totally agreed with everything you said. I resonated with. So
yeah,
I love what you wrote,
mm,
and I totally identify with all of it. Um, yeah, I think like maybe 10 years ago when my journey started. Although I didn't grow up going to church, I uh, identified as a Christian. And Yeah, that I got a lot of hope. I got a lot of grounding in that. At the same time, my journey hadn't begun yet, and when my life imploded and I started turning within to find out what the hell in here has created what happened out there. I really, honestly, just as a naive man, just thought, it's more like I called it the Big Renovation. I'll just go
yeah,
inside, I'll just find out what's broken in here, and then I'll fix it, and then I'll move on.
right,
But it just became part of my life journey for me. And the more
hmm,
I turned inward and the deeper I went within myself, the more I found the answers that were completely radically changing my external world. So
Right.
I've never stopped. And a lot of the things that you were talking about are the things that I've discovered too.
Hmm. Yeah, and I remember I was talking about this idea of truth, and you said something like, "Did you know you're not your thoughts?" And that kind of like I had to stop and think about that for a minute, and then
Right? Yeah, I had to think about that. That it wasn't my thoughts more than me.
yeah, but it's like, okay, how do I let go of my thoughts, or how do I relate to you if you don't think I'm my thoughts? And that's a very interesting thing because what else is left? Well, it's your feelings, it's your consciousness, it's your basic awareness. It's like,
Well, I think if you take away your thoughts, your feelings go
mm,
to some degree as well, because it's your thoughts that generate our emotional response.
right.
So if I
Yeah,
take away the thoughts,
yeah.
my emotions are just presence and peace, not
Hmm.
really anger, not really, it's just love, peace, happiness.
Yeah,
I think it just boils it down and makes it a lot more simple.
yeah. And I think that's what, like, all of us can relate to is those principles of love and peace and connection, because that comes back to even just survival or how you build trust in relationships. And I believe relationship is like connected to existence itself. Like existence is relative to people who are perceiving that sort of existence. And like the more I study like astrotheology or the universe, you see those polarities of the self and the other, and you see that like in the mythologies, and it kind of comes through these orders of uh, order and chaos, or north and south, or up and down. And but yeah, it's interesting to think about. And you recommended like you told me you recommended actually Thich Nhat Hanh, so I got his book, The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching. Uh,
Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah, and
Thich
he's
Nhat
so
Hanh.
relevant to right now too, with
Yeah,
all this rise of identifying and facing racism. Well,
right,
Thich Nhat Hanh was part of the movement with Martin Luther King Jr. So
mm,
it's funny how it's come full circle back to that again.
yeah. And I look at a guy like him, and I'm like, he's not identifying with his thoughts nearly as much as I am. I would say, yeah, he's probably understands some of these virtues a bit better than I do. I don't know.
I think there's kind of a universal conscious wisdom of the
Yeah,
universe, and we're all a part of it.
right.
My part isn't separate from your part, and your part isn't separate from the universe. We're all just interconnected in that.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Yeah,
at times I say things that really resonate with people, and um, they are very complimentary in my thought,
right.
which is very nice. And my ego really loves that. Um, but really, I don't think of the thought as my own. The more I connect with myself, the more I am connected to that universal conscious wisdom.
Mhm.
And the more we discover the truth that has always been there. We
Yeah.
didn't create anything new.
Well, yeah, that's what I've found more is it's like everything I'm learning, I'm almost learning it so I can forget it. It's like
Kind of.
because
Like
I've
I think when my
yeah,
journey had begun facing myself and
mm,
what in here created that out there,
right.
I think I was working really hard at that for about 2, 3 years. Um,
Mhm.
that would have been right about the time that I met you.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I had this V8 forehead slap one day of, oh my God, this whole personal growth thing that I've been working so hard on, I'm not sure it exists. I'm not sure that there's any truth to that at all. Am I really growing beyond what I was, or am I stripping away what never was to reveal the fact that I've always been whole and complete? And I think that's more it.
Yeah, I think so. Because it's like you can't try to become something you're not already in a sense. So it's just that's why mindfulness is so important, I think,
Yeah.
because
Because
you
if I'm a part of universal intelligence, universal wisdom, then really all of that is already in existence. And all
Mhm.
I can do is try to grow my connection and awareness to it. And since human beings are pretty much 95% subconscious in our daily lives, then that's the weak link. Well, how do I grow my level of awareness of this pre-existing wisdom of all creation? Well, by raising your level of conscious awareness of self. And that's a healing journey, I think. And the more that we do that, the more we can raise our conscious awareness to self and be connected to that consciousness.
Yeah. And I remember I think I talked to my dad a little bit about how we are not our thoughts, but his response is, "Well, that has to be explained a little bit,"
Yeah.
basically. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it does because there's it's not like you just stop thinking. That's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
And it's not.
It is pretty much impossible.
I think people are looking for more agreement, or they're looking for maybe maybe there's that term like misery loves company, or another one I've heard is misery needs company. So people actually
Yeah.
have this emotional need
Yeah.
for others to see things the way they do, and then they kind of can feel more accepted in the community, and that's where a lot of social psychology probably comes in too.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, like how would you explain "I'm not my thoughts"? Or I guess.
Well, I am conscious energy.
Yeah,
And the difference between my conscious energy and yours and a tree and the earth is it's all
mm,
part of the same energy.
right,
And I am consciousness having a human experience in this meat sack of sorts.
yeah,
And this is my human experience right now. But everybody talks about, is there an afterlife and what have you? And well, I that 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 suggests that there's a beginning and ending, and there is to this body, but I'm not this body. I'm just the energy inhabiting this body right now. And in this body, there is a brain, and it's the most advanced biological entity on the earth. Um, but it is not who I am. It's just within this body, and it produces between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day, most of them regurgitated day after day. And yet they're occurring within me. But those thoughts
mm,
are not who I am, and I'm not those thoughts.
wow,
Any more than I sit at my laptop plunking away, it's full of information and has access to an abundance of information worldwide.
yeah,
But just because I'm accessing that doesn't mean that I am that information. I'm not. I'm the being observing that information and receiving that information.
yeah,
But it's our thoughts that also create the emotional reaction in response to those thoughts. So neither am I a part of those emotions. They occur within me, but they are not who I am either. I am the observer. I'm the energy experiencing those emotions and thoughts, but they aren't who I am.
mhm, yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So, what are like because you said that like you look down, and to discover truth, you have to like listen to what you're feeling, and if it feels good, then that's what determines truth for you, I guess.
For
Um,
me, yeah, because I finally got to the point. I mean, I grew up, I had emotionally disconnected parents. So I grew up emotionally disconnected within myself. And I went to the only place I knew to be able to
yeah,
make life work, which is in here. And I now call myself a recovering intellectual. But that was my home for most of my life.
right,
But the problem with that is I think as human beings, we are emotional beings that think, not thinking beings that feel. So that left me very disconnected from myself and everyone else and my experience of life. So
mhm,
now I'm learning to use this as a tool rather than it using me, and
yeah,
sink into a deeper connection with myself and my conscious connection to everything and everyone else as well.
mhm,
But the more I do that, the more I get connected with myself, peace, happiness, and love, because only that exists in the present moment. And if I
yeah,
spend all that time in my mind is all about the past or the future.
yeah. Yeah.
Because if I spend time in the present moment, I will connect to self, and your ego doesn't want that.
Right. Yeah. It's
Because
almost.
then you'll discover the truth, which is as the ego, I'm in control of you
Yeah.
because I occupy 95% of your mind and you occupy 5%.
Right. Yeah. And it's almost like your mind has to go through some sort of push, or it has to have something that needs it to quiet itself so that it can actually listen to your emotions, right?
Mhm.
It almost has to go through some sort of trial where you have to, like, okay, I have to just stop thinking for a minute. I have to just be present with myself, and then I can find healing. So like as an introvert, I almost people think, oh, I'm isolating. He's going to be worse off if he's isolating because isolation is supposed to be bad. Like, well, if I've already been around people, isolation is actually how I get my energy back. So it's actually how I can quiet my mind. If it's like meditation, if I'm doing it intentionally, it actually helps me feel more present, and it helps me feel actually more accepted or loved because I'm just present with myself and those emotions. But I have to be doing that intentionally. So
Yeah. Like you said, it's intentionally. I
mm,
mean, because the ego also wants to create disconnection between us as human beings. That's why it creates this whole us versus thing,
mm,
us versus them thing, which has completely divided humanity from the beginning.
right,
And the reason it does that is to break that connection with each other, to put you into emotional isolation. Because the moment that you're cut off from
yeah,
your literal connection with everything, the rest of life, then you become more susceptible to the ego's control. Unless you're being very intentional about what you're doing in that time to give to self, to be turning inward and listening to yourself. But plenty of people get themselves into trouble as well by cutting off from other people. You know, the ego uses shame to say, you know how that you're feeling in here. Don't ever whisper that to anybody else because then they'll judge you like you judge yourself. And then you stay stuck in that place because you can't get that energy moving. You're trapped in your own isolation.
right. Yeah,
Intention is the difference, like you said.
yeah.
You're right.
Well, yeah, you have to intentionally not like judge yourself. And
You did.
that's like the practice of meditation almost right there.
Mhm.
Is you're developing that attitude and that consciousness, that actually helps you connect to those, like the higher dimensions of just being authentic. And
Yeah.
like I watched this movie last night, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which is a very interesting documentary. I think
Yeah.
Stephen
I
Greer.
saw it just recently, actually.
Yeah, and he actually talks about consciousness a lot in that movie because coming from a year of schooling in psychology, it's like, okay, what's the psychological perspective on this this alien phenomenon? And I thought it was quite good that he talked about consciousness because that's a very important subject to talk about if you're going to be talking about something new or interesting or scary or strange, uh, because you have to be in a safe place psychologically to explore something like that, I would say. um, but he talked about meditating and how it's basically this childlike innocence that can access communication to these higher beings, and that's almost like what I've experienced, like in some of the supernatural and charismatic miracles and stuff. Is you have to have this almost thankful and grateful attitude, and then and you connect the feeling. And it's like the other book that you recommended, which was or
Oh yeah, yeah,
author Joe
yeah,
Dispenza, and he talks about how you have to align like the feeling and the mind, then you have to become grateful, or you have to believe you already have it, which goes back to like these ancient magic or the Bible, where Jesus says, "Believe you have it already, and then it will be done for you," right?
yeah.
And then so that's like this law of attraction, and so it's almost like there's definitely something there because seen it. I've seen like those positive things produce miracles and healing in people. with my own eyes. So it's not like it's not too hard for me to believe that there are aliens too, because after you've seen miracles, it's like, well, that's just one more step in that direction or something.
Mhm.
But 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 what do you think about like the law of attraction? Have you studied that a lot or no?
As far as the that documentary goes, I almost found like they were two separate documentaries, kind of not quite meeting in the middle in terms of the consciousness and the aliens. I was right
Right.
there. I found the aliens entertaining.
Yeah.
I found consciousness completely. I found that very helpful. But I
Yeah.
found like, okay, I'm not sure why these two things are being put together,
Yeah.
and I didn't weave that together.
Right.
Um, as far as law of attraction goes, I'm definitely a believer in that. Um, I'm
Mm.
not sure that I necessarily agree with a lot of how it's. I think a lot of how it's put forward is, in my experience, not true.
Yeah.
In that, oh well, you just like the internet, like Instagram and Facebook, full of posts every day about, oh, good things are coming your way, and it doesn't work like that. It's you don't if you can just sit there on the sofa all day long and say, I'm worthy of having a new car, I'm worthy of having a bigger house, I'm worthy. Yeah, you are, but how's that working for you? It's That's not how it works, and it's like they talk about positive affirmations. Just stick those post-it notes all over your mirror and recite them every morning. The problem is that that's a thought in your conscious mind, but in your subconscious mind, you've got all this unhealed pain and all of these limiting beliefs that you have been following as your truth since you were a child.
Yeah.
And when you carry this deep belief within your body that I am not enough, that nobody will ever love me for the truth of who I am, that I can't be my vulnerable self with people, all these messages, I am not deserving, okay, you can recite I am worthy in the mirror all day long, but when you hold that belief in your body and your brain recognize there's a dissonance here between these two things. And it's the energetic vibe within our body of what we hold in our true beliefs that sets our energetic vibe. And that low vibe energy you're attracting, energy attracts like, and
Yeah.
you're not going to be attracting the abundance of more while holding vibrationally less.
Yeah.
So I think that that's how I see how the common view of law of attraction, I think, is missing that.
Right. Well, yeah, like, and I've heard it. It sounds almost the same as karma or the organic karma. I think Alan
Yeah.
Watts talks about. Or another way I've heard it talked about is the law of mirroring.
Mhm.
Basically, the way you act is what you're going to produce in people around you, and then
Right.
that's your message to yourself to change. Or because if you don't like what you're seeing in people around you, it's probably you that's part of producing that. So it's like,
Yeah.
or part of you maybe still wants that, or is that's your way of coping or something. But I don't know.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, and with people, we attract people either. I mean, we grow up with all of this programming built into us, thought and behavior patterns that are adopted as self-protective coping mechanisms, right? And in our relationships with other people, we're either going to attract people that will fit into our existing behavioral patterns, or attract people to break them, one or the other.
Right.
But again, you are attracting, like people are constantly saying, well, why am I attracting people that are a certain way? Well, good question, but you're asking that question outside yourself. What is it? What's going on out here that I keep meeting all these losers or all these people that are not what I ultimately want? But you're not attracting what you want. You're attracting what you hold.
Right. Yeah, and it's hard. It's always hard to see or to understand yourself or your own subconscious because you've never had nobody's ever opened up your mind and pulled out your subconscious and said, "Here it is." It's like it's always something that's like behind this veil, or so. And then that goes back to like some of the symbolism of the veil being torn, and now you can see. So it's like
Well,
Um,
I think there's some truth to, and this is kind of what I do is pull out people's subconscious and show it to them. Because to me, your subconscious is, I mean, I can't see it all, but I don't hold your limitations. I don't hold your fears. I don't hold your limiting beliefs. So I can see you from a bigger perspective than you can see yourself in certain ways, especially when it comes to unhealed pain,
mhm,
because all unhealed pain is your subconscious, and
right.
you can't see what's in your subconscious. And so how do I fix what I can't see and understand within myself? But
Yeah.
since I don't hold those limitations, I can see into the subconscious cues of what's going on in those places, uh, more than you can yourself. And I think
Right.
that's in part, and this is just my subjective belief, but so far is that that's why we're interconnected energetically, because we need other people in order to be able to grow past myself. I need to be able to get past myself, which means I need you to help see into myself. And that's
Yeah.
why people suffer in silence, because as long as you're in emotional isolation, growing past your perspective of self is virtually impossible.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, like, yeah, I've heard like talking about okay, what are some universal truths? I've heard people say a whole suffering is like one of the highest truths. Is like we all suffer, and even if you don't agree with suffering, well, you're still gonna suffer, and and then it's still gonna be true to you, true for you. Um, but to me, there's still something kind of wrong with that because it's like it's not like you have to focus on suffering the whole time because then you're not really taking responsibility for your own happiness or your own well-being. That
Mhm.
goes back to the law of attraction thing again. Like, well, if suffering is such a high truth or starting point, I guess it could be a starting point, but it's like, how do you, okay, now what? Now what? It's like,
Mhm.
so there's these very pragmatic truths that are true to our experiences, but then how do we actually think about that on the inward journey? So a lot of extroverted people don't really understand like my perspective, I feel like, when I start talking about some of these principles that can help the way you think on the inward journey. So it's like so that and so then it's like you start being like, well, thank you for that, even though it was a terrible experience. It's like and they don't understand that. They're like, well, that was terrible. Why would you be thankful for that? It's like, well, it actually has to do with that forgiveness and the letting go and the so yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about
We don't,
suffering?
I mean, everybody loves it when everything in life is just gelling,
Yeah.
but we don't learn anything.
Right.
We learn through adversity. And when we're 95% subconscious, then the problems you need to face in terms of changing yourself to change your experience of life, well, if 95% of you subconscious, guess where all the hidden secrets are? In the place you can't find them. So, okay, so if the universe wants to get your attention, it can't just speak to you through the subconscious because you don't think it exists, and you won't hear the voice. So, what will you hear? Pain. So, well, what determines our suffering then? Well, we do, because we resist emotional pain. Human beings are afraid of emotional pain. So if something happens in my life that causes me emotional pain, I'm going to naturally want to resist it out of fear, and I'll just stuff that shit right down in here. I'll come back for it later. Well, I gotta life. I gotta attend to life. You're not coming back. You're going to stay in avoidance, and let's just call it neglect of self out of fear of the pain that I'm hiding in here. So, well, where's the here that I'm hiding? In my subconscious. The more I stuff down in here, the more I retreat into here to get as far away from that pain as I can to numb it out. So that doesn't have to be my experience of life. But the
Right.
moment that we turn in to face that pain is the moment that we start to create that movement of energy to be able to free up and let go of it.
Right. And I think I've seen that in some of these new age communities where they've in their past they've been a part of such like these part of these like cults or Bible cults that have so identified with their thoughts that the moment they disagree, they're cut off from those communities. That it's like they almost have to retreat into the intellect, um, just to avoid that pain that they actually have has been invalidated by that group for so long and is going to be continued to be invalidated as they leave that group. So then it's like you
Mhm.
have these really seemingly really smart people, but they just don't seem to have this happiness or peace around them. They have this like really strict kind of belief or rigid belief around what their ideas,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I'm hoping to help affect in some of these communities is how do we understand our emotional body as well or find balance that way. I don't know.
Well, I think the universe created emotional pain to
Yeah.
get our attention. That's how it speaks to us through energy that we can feel.
Hmm.
And what determines the amount of suffering that you're going to experience in life is determined by the amount of resistance that you put to feeling yourself emotionally. So the more avoidance I go into in terms of resisting feeling this emotional pain and connection with myself, well, if the universe is to break that, it has to produce an equal amount or greater of energy uh, to break my grasp on that. So that's the more I resist, the more pain it's going to take to wake me up. And
Right.
I've certainly experienced that when life imploded a little over 10 years ago. I ended up in divorce, loss of career, loss of finances, loss of home, like the whole shebang. And well, why did it take so much to get through to me? Well, because that's the amount of energy that I was putting into resisting experiencing my own suffering. I still don't enjoy it now, but I don't allow my fear to create a resistance to my experiencing and allowing myself to experience what it is in the moment. And as
Right.
long as I do, it's always in bite-sized pieces that I can handle. I get scared, but I just be with it, allow myself to feel it, and then I can deal with it and heal it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's like you look at people around you and you kind of think, oh, they're just focused on what they're focused on. Um, like, but I think we all have that pain, and it's like, and what are we actually doing with that pain? Uh, in when we're by ourselves, or um, like, or do we feel comfortable with that pain when we're by ourselves? Or and then because of what we do, I think in those with that pain in the when we're with ourselves is going to change how our relationships are in the world. And I think that's like you'll hear that in some of these religions, but they also teach that you it's that and you need our God or that and you need this and you got to keep the Sabbath or something. And it's like
Mhm.
why are we adding on all these other things when we could just go and have these healthy relationships with ourselves? And I think that's where it's like if you have these fundamental universal truths about yourself, then you can actually and you actually understand that some of that a little bit more, then
Mhm.
you can be more free to let go of some of these ideas about religion or the world that you thought you
Yeah.
needed to, right?
Well, and for me, why I've gone beyond uh, religion. And by that, I don't mean that I have become bigger or better than religion, but in my limited experience of religion, everything seemed to be suggesting that the power, the answers, the source is outside myself, which seemed to kind of exclude me. Like I'm in a helpless position where all I can do is ask for what I want and it'll either be given or not. And okay, that doesn't empower me. That kind of
Right.
actually disempowers me. And so it doesn't resonate with me as a universal truth. So why I like, for instance, Buddhism is not a religion. And nor do they suggest that you can't continue to be a Christian or whatever else your faith might be and still hold Buddhist principles. because
Mm.
they're not in conflict with one another. But what they do is focus you inward and say that you experience God through you. If you want to find the power of God, look within yourself, because why do you think that that's not where He would put it?
Yeah. And that's what I found to be more and more true as well. Uh, it's
Yeah.
even there in Luke 17. It's like nobody's going to say here it is or there it is because it's within you, right?
Yeah.
And we have all these people who are still looking for the second coming. Or it's like, well, that's probably within you. Um,
Right.
it's like,
But I mean,
yeah,
every time you see somebody who is suffering, and this isn't me in any way
mm,
saying anything disparaging about any form of religion,
yeah,
but when somebody who is suffering is having a religious experience, they are not looking within. They are looking external. They're looking up. They're looking out. It's somewhere out there.
right,
Okay, well, why do you think your suffering continues? Because it's not out there. It's in here. And that doesn't mean that God or Jesus doesn't exist, and that I don't think that that's true. I do, but I think that that's my access point is in myself, because why
mm,
would God want me to not include myself as part of my own solution or source of power?
yeah,
That's where He puts it. That's the way I think of it.
yeah, and to me that always has to be the case. Like, because what else is left if you haven't dealt with yourself or your subconscious or your pain or
Yeah,
and and if the fruit of the spirit is about peace and joy and goodness, and sincerity of heart, right? So you have
yeah,
to deal with uh, reality on the level of pain and the level of what's within you. So it's like, so what are those universal truths? And then things can become clear, I think, for us. Um,
but for me too, like you talked about truth and reality.
mm,
Okay, but I do believe that as neuroscience has shown, and I believe it, that if the average person is 95% subconscious, is it enough for me if I only hold consciously, I only hold 5% control over my mind? Is that enough for me to decide what is truth, and more importantly, eliminating 99.9% of everything that is apparently not truth? I don't
right.
think so. So, how do I determine what's right and wrong? I think my body already knows that. My body is connected to universal wisdom, conscious wisdom. And so, listen to the resonance in my body. My body will tell me, not necessarily in words, but you have a calmness, a resonance of energy, or you have a dissonance of energy. And I trust that.
Hmm.
So more and
Yeah.
more, I have kind of let go of this need to hold truth, because the moment truth is finite, and the moment
Mm,
that I think that this thing that I hold right now, this belief that I hold, is universal gospel truth,
mm,
now I'm opposed and need to defend everything that does not align with that.
yeah.
Why do I want to do that?
Yeah.
You might think slightly different from me, and by the time we're done this conversation, I've shifted,
Yeah.
and I now see what I thought from over here. I see it quite differently, and I want to leave myself open to be able to make those shifts so that I
Mhm.
can be more curious in how you think, rather than just looking for agreement. And, oh, you're not aligning with what
Mm,
I'm saying right now. So give me a second
mm.
here while I show you how you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that. That's divisive.
Yeah. And I think that's actually what truth meant, I think, thousands of years ago, is people actually living together in a functioning society and getting along despite our differences that we've connected on this deeper level. I think that's what truth is actually referring to, where we've kind of intellectualized it maybe in the West nowadays. So yeah, it's definitely important to clarify what do you mean by truth. I think that's an important conversation to have. So
And the moment that we're defending the truth means that you're alienating the other person. It's a form of dehumanization. And I don't think that words and beliefs and thoughts are worth dehumanizing and disconnecting from the rest of life.
yeah,
I really don't.
And what does that say about like God if we have to all agree on who he is on this intellectual level before we can be accepted by him? Like, what does that say about what we're doing in our subconscious to ourselves, I guess, would be the deeper question. Um, um, and maybe that has to do with like how we've been raised with our parents and maybe our family history. Um, it's like you like in this cult I was in, this it was a Korean group. Um it was almost like this kind of strict you got to keep the feast days and you got to get there on time and you got to wear your suit and tie. It just made me wonder like how were these kids raised, and some of them had been born in that group and grew up in that group. And so it's certainly interesting how we're influenced and how we trust our parents so much. But then how do we get past just the conventional wisdom of what we were taught growing up, and then
Mhm.
and actually feel free enough to actually test some of these ideas that we were taught, and deal with some of these phobias. And that's where I think it can be beneficial to surround yourself with people who are caring or loving or have those who are in tune with themselves. So, and that's where I think like life coaching is actually going to be more and more important in the future. Um, as some of these groups start coming apart because their prophecies are just going to fail and fail and fail because they can't all be right about their intellectual side of it. So, yeah,
Well, I think all suffering comes down to the ego. And the problem with that is that the ego is in control of 95% of my mind. So it's that 5%. It's that window that I want to expand because maybe I was 95% when I started my journey. I don't know how to measure that, to be honest. So what am I now? Well, I don't think I'm 95%. I'm more than that. Okay, so what are we talking? 90, 85%, 80%? What am I now? I don't know, but I'm happier. I'm freer. I'm able to stay present in the moment more. I'm able to stay separate from my thoughts and my emotions. I have things happen in life that I didn't want, that I didn't expect, that I want to resist, and yet I'm able to find freedom in it and acceptance. Okay, well, I think I'm growing my that percentage of control over my brain and being able to make conscious choices so that I can maintain presence and acceptance with life. Okay, well, the more I can be in that place for me, the more I can create that space for you. And what more do we want than that?
yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with overcoming these basic fears that we grew up with. Um,
Yeah,
it's not even just the fear of the suffering. It's might be well, it is usually the fear of suffering, but it's the fear of suffering on a wide scale of different kinds of suffering, um,
yeah,
and
which are
beliefs.
always on the outside of you.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's like until you're like in this movie with the Close Encounters, he talked about until you're free from this fear. It's like people have had a near death experience. All of a
Yeah,
sudden, they can feel more alive to just live life because they've overcome this another fear, which is the fear
yeah.
of death. And yeah, so what are our thoughts and these things we're trying to live by that keep us chained to the fear of death or the fear of suffering,
Right.
and keep us from experiencing those emotions, um, right? Yeah. Anyway, I think that's good. Yeah.
That's fascinating stuff. I could talk about this stuff all day long.
Yeah.
I've been on this journey for 10 years.
Mhm.
I take, as many people as I can through it as well. And the more people expand their level of conscious awareness of self, the more they're able to choose the things that give them the freedom that they want to feel love, to feel peace, to feel happiness, and to be free of suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like the psychologist will tell you to uh, practice the authentic self, because a lot of people join these groups and they actually take on destructive, like more totalitarian cults or minds. They'll take on the personality of the cult leader, and they've even had these groups take a Myers-Briggs test, and they would all take on a certain personality type or whatever. Um, so it's interesting. It's like, how do we stay in touch with ourselves? And it's
Right.
or and it's really just look at who you were as a kid or growing up, and then it's like, okay, am I in that place still, or do I still feel like the same person, maybe as I was when I was a kid, or in terms of that innocence and that free attitude? I think that that can be a way out of some of these things for people.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Mm,
Again, the internet full of messages of just be yourself. Who
right.
the hell is that?
Yeah.
Because by the time I'm before I'm even walking, my
Mhm.
ego is explaining my world and my human experience to me. I cry and nobody comes. Okay, you can't depend on people to be there when you need them. And we don't become aware of self until adolescence. Well, by that time, I've been following what the ego has been telling me. The ego, like people talk about what you see in the world. Well, your eyes don't see anything. Your eyes receive light information. It's your brain that tells you what's in front of you, what you're
Mhm.
actually seeing. And since my mind is 95% controlled by my ego, that means what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've experienced, what I think, what I believe, uh, most of my life experience has been told to me and interpreted to me through my ego. So by the time I become an adolescent and become aware of self, I'm not becoming aware of self at all. I'm becoming aware of a story of what self is, but how much truth is there to it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just be yourself. What's
Mhm.
that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's like some advice like moms will give their kids is like, "Mom, I don't know how to have relationships." Like, "Oh, just be yourself." Like, okay.
I
Um,
don't know what
I,
that is, mom.
I gotta go find out what that is. And
Yeah,
then I ended up in a cult. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah. So it's like, but yeah, it is. You almost have to learn about like mind control. You have to learn about, or I guess the nice way to put it is social influence or undue influence.
yeah,
Um, how are those influences affecting you, and
yeah.
how secure are you just to be free with your emotions? And I think
Well, and
that's
your relationships with other people are just going to be a reflection of the relationship you cultivate with self,
yeah, right,
really.
right.
I mean, a lot of people will, stand back a little bit when I say it, but relationships are one of the things that I focus on in my work more than anything else, because that's what's most important to me,
Hmm.
and where I've had the most struggling in my life has been in my relationships. And the reality of it is, there's no such thing as relationship conflict. It doesn't exist.
Mm.
It's inner conflict that's being projected onto my relationship because I don't know how to take responsibility of the emotions within me, that when we
Right.
fall in love and it softens and opens the heart, what's inside comes out, all the love and all the fear and pain I've been packing in there all these years. And when that
Wow.
starts to rise to the surface for love to heal it,
Mm.
I don't understand that, and I get
Yeah.
afraid because we're afraid of emotional
Yeah.
pain. And
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
the love that I have in this relationship is coming up,
Hmm.
is what's bringing it to the surface to be healed. I misinterpret that and think that you're making me feel this way. And since I don't like it, now
Yeah.
I'm blaming you.
That's actually very freeing to hear that. Um, but a lot of people won't understand why if they don't have an understanding around responsibility,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I don't feel when you're not around, I don't feel this way. So I know it's you.
Right.
But you're not in a relationship with David Copperfield here. We don't have the ability to put emotions into other people, but I
Right.
sure can trigger what's in there already out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like this singles Facebook group I joined. This one is like, well, besides stress and dick, what else do you have to offer me? It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, well, sorry, I can't offer you stress.
Yeah.
Because it's like, 'cause I don't believe that stress comes from other people. I believe that that's a perspective that
Exactly.
creates stress. And
Yeah.
and what are you doing with that perspective? So it's like,
So if I go into my next relationship knowing this already, that
mhm,
okay, if we cultivate this close connection in this relationship, and the more that we're growing this love between us and within us and sharing it with each other, the safer I'm going to feel. And the
mhm,
safer I feel, the more my heart is going to say, okay, you have, because it takes love to heal emotional pain. And now that you've cultivated that in this place of safety, I'm going to start releasing some of this pain for you to be able to heal so that you can be free.
yeah,
And since I know that, and all of a sudden this pain starts coming up within me, if I'm aware of it, then I'm looking at you and saying, oh man, thank you for doing such a bang up job at making me feel safe and loved so that this pain can come up to the surface. I'm just going to do what I need to do now for myself to be able to heal that so that I don't project it onto our relationship, and I can just take ownership of it myself, clear up that space so that I can offer you even more of my whole healed self. Said no
mm,
one ever in a relationship. But
right.
that's what we need to do, is learn how to do love differently.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even that's even touches on like this rubber banding effect. I know men, they almost need a sense of autonomy. I think it has to do with the love need of trust. Maybe is they do need that time away for themselves or the man cave, and then they can come back to the relationship with more energy. I think that's with women it was called the wave effect, or the emotions come in waves or something. So I think that's another way of we test our relationships to see if they're authentic, instead of just going through routine. Um, I think like a lot of people aren't really aware that we test each other in our subconscious, uh, because we're trying to build that trust and
Yeah,
see how safe we can be. And I think that has to do
right.
with the the true self as well. Um, yeah,
But we're also part of us in that part of our subconscious mind that has written all of these self-protective programs. Like you and your 5% mind sit there and go, oh, what I would really love is to have a deep, loving, open, vulnerable connection with somebody so that I could feel really loved. Yeah, that's what you want in your 5% mind. But your
right.
ego doesn't want any of that crap. That sounds dangerous. I got stuff in here. I don't want you to see that. The more I let you into that place, the more scared I feel that you're going to hurt me, like everybody else has always hurt me. So when a relationship starts to get deep enough that I feel that vulnerable opening within me, I panic. And now everything that I'm interpreting within myself is being interpreted through pain. And my brain is looking for reasons, whether they exist or it has to make them up, why you're not right now offering me what I need to be safe. And I'm kind of resenting that you're not doing that. So you must not really care about me. But my mind made all that up
Yeah,
to support the defense mechanism to close down.
yeah. And the more intelligent we are, the more we'll rationalize it.
Absolutely. The more mind identified you are, the
Mm,
more mind centered you are, the more control of the ego you're under. And
yeah,
your ego is going to say, see, I told you you wasn't safe.
yeah.
See, I told you you shouldn't have been doing that. Now you know that that's the limit. Don't ever go beyond that because it's not safe.
Right. Yeah, and
Now you're trapped.
if we're not in touch with that energy, we don't actually know what we're capable of. We don't actually understand our own authority over certain issues in our life, and we don't
Right.
understand that we can have a different attitude in those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
And I
And
think that, I think far more people than society seems to suggest. I think there's far more people out there that hold some level of trauma energy than people talk about.
yeah,
And I think that people hear the word trauma and they immediately think of the situation.
mhm,
Well, I don't think I've been through any traumatic events in my life. So therefore, I must not have trauma. Eh, that's no. It's not the event. It's your
yeah,
response to the event. Some people can go to the dentist and come out traumatized.
yeah,
And once you hold that trauma energy within you, part of your nervous system is locked into fight or flight mode 24 hours a day.
yeah.
So now add in emotional vulnerability to somebody whose nervous system is locked into fight or flight mode. How's that combination going to work?
Right. Yeah, not good.
And all
Yeah.
the work is inside to be able to soothe ourselves so that we can take care of that fear
Mhm.
and heal ourselves. So then we can then offer that to our partner. But we're
Yeah.
not going to find it through our partner or in our partner. And if we hold that expectation, then we're going to be disappointed and we're going to blame.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like, I think Sadhguru said, uh, the only reason people are unhappy is life did not go the way that they thought things should go.
It's so true. Again, people look at me a little funny sometimes, and I say, I'm not only a recovering intellectual.
Right.
I used to be a real goal setter. I'd always
Yeah.
have what I called a little cookie out there on the horizon, something to move
Yeah.
forward to.
Right.
Now I don't set goals at all.
Yeah, me neither.
I really don't. I just stay present in the moment. I surrender to what comes to me. You messaged me the other day. Hey, what about doing a video? Sure. I just
Mm,
say yes to everything.
right.
Um, and if I set big goals, all I do is scare the shit out of my ego, who doesn't like change and
Mm,
doesn't like risk. So if I set this big goal, now all of a sudden I've just woken my ego, who spends his whole day trying to talk me out of it. So I
right.
just focus on the next right step.
Mhm.
It lets him keep sleeping, and I actually create more in my life than ever before
Right.
while focusing on less.
Mhm. That's very
And all
interesting.
my
Is
goals don't exist; they're future. Well, I don't
Mhm.
want to spend my day thinking about a time frame that doesn't exist.
Yeah. You can't you're not as effective even in the present. You're
Yeah,
not as present in the present. So and then your future is gonna look like that too. So it's like
yeah,
so yeah, it's very powerful that the whole idea of the presence, right, between the two thieves, right, the past and the future.
yeah,
Uh, that's where the truth should die,
yeah.
or whatever. So no, I like all of it, and yeah, I definitely agree. And I'll try not to ask you too many times to come on here because I know I don't want you saying yes to absolutely everything, but
No, ask away, man. I enjoy it. I love connecting with you.
yeah.
I love the journey that you're on.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
I totally for it. So ask away anytime. Always
Okay,
happy
sounds good.
to.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been going for almost 90 minutes. That's about where we usually stop.
Oh, well,
So,
time
okay.
flies. I didn't look at the time at all.
Yeah, and I think I might have paid for a subscription or just let me keep recording because it usually stops at 40 minutes. But anyway, we'll see what happens.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, I think I'll just hit stop recording. Thanks for watching, guys. If you watched this whole thing, I definitely enjoyed it. Enjoyed having you, James.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, and we'll definitely do this again sometime.
Sounds great. I'd love to.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.